We'll be talking about the procedure of competitive selection of the heads of public utilities in Kyiv. Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. I am Volodymyr Bruschenko, the Deputy Chairman of the Anti-Corruption Council at the Kyiv City Mayor office. I am not a civil servant. I am the representative of the public sector. I will briefly tell you what is Anti-Corruption Council. That is a consultative advisory body which is set up according to the resolution of the Kyiv Mayor in February 2015. Anti-Corruption Council has the representatives of civil society, not the workers of the city municipal office, the MPs of the Kyiv Council, and representatives of Kyiv City administration. This council is set up, first of all, to examine the problems related to corruption in Kyiv, and after examining them, to provide recommendations which are directed towards the minimization of corruption in Kyiv, to reducing corruption risks. Also, Anti-Corruption Council is developing the anti-corruption program of Kyiv. Anti-Corruption Council works in two working groups. One group is identifying corruption risks and activities. That's like operational type of a group. They examine the cases, the problems. Very actively, the mass media were talking about the dismissal of Mr. Vavrish, the deputy architect. The proposal to resign was given to him in the result of the meeting of the Anti-Corruption Council. And the second working group of the Anti-Corruption Council is a group on developing the procedures which will minimize corruption risks. I believe this is more important group because that tries to change the rules of game which define the activity of different structures in order to minimize corruption risks. The examples could be the activity in issues of giving permits for outside promotion. And this also is actively working in the sphere of utilities. And one of the results of the work of this group was the draft provisions on selection of the heads of public utilities. Traditionally, the heads of utilities were appointed by the Kyiv City administration. How they are selected, there are certain requirements to the candidate who wants to become the director, but we understand that the utilities in there mostly are profit losing. There are many problems in their activities and there are many corruption risks. Utility, as any other company, has to work and earn profit. For the utility to be able to give some profit to the city and to the citizens, there should be a head. And on how the head is elected, how qualified the head is, what happens to the utility depends on that. And to initiate the competitive selection, to initiate that, the council in April this year recommended to Kyiv Mayor the draft provisions on competitive election. That was voted for and signed by the mayor so that the Kyiv City Council passes it. And very long time that we could not submit that document to the meeting of Kyiv City Council. Last week, I believe on Wednesday, there was a meeting of the Commission on Property of Kyiv City Council, and during that meeting they did not consider that draft. And now, together with the colleagues, with the members of the Commission, we came here to tell you why this happened, what are the comments to this draft, and to find out when will the heads of the utilities be elected openly, but not appointed. Like no one knows how and when. They dismiss some person, they appoint another one, and the utility is profit losing. So that was an introduction. Now I will be inviting the participants of the process.
Уважаемые коллеги, добрый день.
Esteemed colleagues, good afternoon. My name is Mikhail Serebriakov, an expert of RPR Kyiv, and also a member of the Anti-Corruption Council and the Kyiv City Chairman. Also, I am part of the announced Volodymyr Group. If you remember, about 1 year ago, Vitaly Gryb, when he became the mayor of Kyiv, he stated that in Kyiv they are going to introduce the practice of the zero tolerance to corruption, like we are talking about public, procurement, the personnel selection, etc., etc. He did not invent any bicycle. All the political forces, while actually coming to power, they promised the same, all the time. And in particular, we are talking about personnel policy. You can't find any political force who would not promise any kind of changes in the communal services or utilities provision, and this is kind of a very good and indicative example. 18 months has expired since those days, but there are no progress made. If there are some of these small progress, but actually which can be visible in the RPR group in Kyiv, we didn't want to reconcile the situation together all the stakeholders who expressed their wish to help us, and the provision on the competitive election for the socio-economic activities of the communal services in the city of Kyiv. While working on this draft document, we used the best results of the RPR, which they utilized when nominating director of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. This project makes provision for the following for the city of Kyiv. First of all, we attempted to find the monopoly of the Kyiv state administration to nominate or to appoint the head of the Kyiv municipality. So not only Mr. Klitschko be responsible for that, but we had to come up with several candidates, and the special contest or competition committee had to have the final say in that. So far, the basic proposal of the anti-corruption civil associations, which are going to become ears and mouths of in the eyes of the Kyiv public, and they will actually sound the alarm if there is any sign of the abuse when taking care of this procedure. And the meetings of this commission will be open, transparent, and anybody can attend those meetings if they should take any interest in that. So the procedure will be absolutely open, transparent, and this information is actually reflected one of the site of the Anti-Corruption Council. Also, Vladimir mentioned those difficulties we encountered when trying to push this project. The text was actually prepared in April this year, more than half a year ago, and the meeting of the Anti-Corruption Council, where we have both the officials and the public sector, they actually everybody appraised that, including the mayor. There was unanimous support this April to register this draft document in the wording which we had then those days. Unfortunately, we all say this is also fault of ours, because 6 months were wasted in order to change the wording in order to improve it. And the final text was better, it appeared to be better, but the level of those amendments actually did not justify the time wasted for that. Unfortunately, we are close to the end of the year. We had the local elections campaign, and now in Kyiv we are going to face the personnel rotation in the local authorities. That means that each last week will mean that we lost the opportunity to appoint not the corruptionists but more integral, more honest people who are more suitable for such offices. The very recent example, Zhitny Market, we had a vacancy the other day, and now if the RPR will fail to achieve at least the possibility to appoint this person, the manager, based on the competition approach, the result of that, the another manager will become a person who will be the target of our bitter criticism later, whatever. And I believe that this delay will end sooner or later, and this draft law will be adopted, which actually is being applied even today, more or less successfully. And there, my colleague will tell you more details about that. Thank you for your attention. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Oksana Velichko. I represent RPR for Kyiv here, and I'm going to talk about such practical aspects since I participate today as a part of the Competition Commission, Kyiv Transport Service, the major organization which is responsible for parking laws in Kyiv. As it has been mentioned, all the managers of the communal utilities organizations were appointed previously by the mayor of the city, but since the manager of this communal, Magomed, was actually caught red-handed, being involved in bribing. And actually, the new appointee, if we have nothing against him, but he's been always a lawyer, but they couldn't find a single day when he actually had any people who report to him. So that means that we have to take care of improvement of the selection of the personnel. And from his CV it can be seen that he was a authorized person during the Poroshenko campaign for the presidential elections campaign. I mean, we can see that this kind of appointment either to thank somebody, or some kind of forced activity, or they are forced to do that in order to please some of the high officials. And I believe that the management of the city would be nice for the management of the city to give to give this right to somebody else in order to bring the order to this specific sphere. And those people who will take the public transport or their own cars, their own cars, because there is no place to park their cars, and they are parked in the middle of the street, and most likely that the communal authority will lose money to the tune of 4 million hryvnia. And everybody who pays 10 hryvnia to the parking expert, not always they issue the special ticket for parking, and the only person who can resolve this problem is a good manager, and on him very much depends how he can cope with that. And so we, the public, would like to see in his position a top professional, and integral and honest person, because through the hands, literally speaking, of this person, a lot of money comes through his hands every day. And very important how he's going to be appointed or selected, and what kind of person we're going to have in this position. A few words about this commission, which already works, and this contents or competition is in the middle of its implementation. How we actually formed this commission. This commission, actually, several people are included based on the proposal of the city council. Three person from the Kyiv Council, 2 persons from the anti-corruption organizations. In our case, we are talking about the Corruption Council, and the Profile Organization also has some nominees here. We started with the announcement, which was put to the city administration website. And specifically speaking, who actually seeks any employment at this site. In parallel to that, we have the competition for nomination of Director of Communal and Enterprise Kyiv film. Only 5 persons actually registered, and all of them are former managers, so they are going to again to take kind of the first choice for us. We are going to select from the not from the best or not from the cream. The situation with the transfer, the situation is a bit better because there are 30 candidates. 9 of those, when they submitted their CVs, and I actually had my doubts that we won't have anybody, worth of our attention. But later, anyway, which actually brings hope into our hearts. We have good candidates because there are some representatives of business, and they have some ambitious plans and the desire to bring this enterprise out of the crisis. There are some ATO, former ATO fighters, and we received their CVs. We considered those, and we set them a task. This is the second stage of competition, to submit their proposals regarding the strategic development of this communal service. They have to send in their plans, strategic plans, how to find a way out of this crisis, further development, etc., etc. I believe this is a very strong point because the competitive proposals we received, less than 30, honestly speaking, because when they had to sit down and think how to develop this enterprise, 4 of them actually decided to take back their proposals. And this kind of the proposals are very whenever we have their proposals, we're going to put them on the website. And their proposal will be put on this website, and there will be open access to that. And those who are interested to make this company work successfully, they can compare the selected candidate and the proposals. So such a positive step.
We are making now a short list of all the candidates that submitted their works. And we now define who will get to the next tour, the interview. The first is resume, second is their projects, and third is interviews. I believe that these competitions could be very effective and absolutely just fakes. Depends on the representatives of who are in the commission, because just putting it on the website of the city administration covers a little audience. We were spreading this information on Facebook. I would like to thank Karl Wola, who was also sharing the information about this vacancy. And eventually, normal candidates started approaching us who wanted to participate in this competition. Now we are electing these 10 persons who will get to the next tour. In the commission there are many representatives of Kyiv Council and Kyiv administration, and now I'm pleased to note that many of my colleagues who are part of the commission do not see former heads of Kyiv Transpark Service company. We were sending information about candidates to the activists. They were gathering information about candidates. They were also referring to some articles about their not very good activities. So summing it up, I would like to say it is very important how the public will be elected, because today these are two representatives who are nominated by anti-corruption organizations, but to become a nominee from anti-corruption organization is also not difficult. So when introducing amendments to the provision, we will recommend that these are to be representatives of anti-corruption organizations which are nominated by anti-corruption council, so that there's another filter for these people. It's easy to include your own representatives and then manage the whole competition. We hope and we call upon you follow this competition. Look at the nominees who will get to the final stage, and I hope that we will elect a very good person. Very brief. We want to leave some time for questions. Good afternoon. I'm Kiva. I'm the expert of RPR. Unfortunately, because limited time, I will very briefly inform you what is the perspective of that provision. Everything's very simple. If there are any comments to that, the comments could be considered during the plenary session. This provision could be taken as the basis, and during the plenary session the amendments could be considered and voted for by MPs. If the result of consideration of these amendments we will find out that the provision has to be worked on additionally, we'll send it back to the Commission. Unfortunately, this may delay passing of that provision for another 30 days. Because we need this provision to be passed as soon as possible, and we know the principle, the better is an enemy of a good. We would like to ask all the MPs, all the members of the Kyiv Council to consider all comments during one of the first plenary meetings of Kyiv City Council. And another proportion, all the fractions should delegate to Anti-Corruption Council their representatives to establish proper communication, because this advisory board and MPs. Thank you. If you have any questions. Head of Samopomich faction, Sergei Gusovsky. We can organize some additional briefing. I'm Sergei Gusovsky. I'm the head of Samopovich faction in Kyiv City Council. First, I would like to say that we fully support the activity of Anti-Corruption Council and the activity of the RPR team, which demonstrates very important work from the point of view of developing regulations which would help the city to develop openly, transparently. We want to say that we fully support this process, and we guarantee that the public RPR team could count on our assistance, could use our faction as an instrument to have all these important decisions, which are key decisions for the city to move forward, so that these decisions are not just supported by our faction, but we will organize consolidation of ideas. We're now working hard on amendments to that resolution. We believe this document could be even strengthened from the point of view of transparency of decisions to make impossible different manipulations when the document exists, but it is used just to appoint some puppets. So I would like to again emphasize that our faction will be supporting, and besides that document, there are two more very important topics for our cooperation. We need to introduce amendments to the law of Ukraine on local self-governance, because this is the prerogative of the city mayor to appoint and dismiss the heads of utilities to avoid the situation when there will be the case or the claim submitted to the court. Then we need to work on amendments to the law of Ukraine on local self-governance. And second, on anti-corruption council. The position of Samopomich faction is that anti-corruption council cannot be headed by the mayor himself. This is the mistake in organizing such an important body. And as an example, I could like to give a very specific situation. The MP of our faction, Roman Andreyka, submitted the request to be included into anti-corruption council, but it was suggested that he should draft the program, and then someone will make a decision to include him into anti-corruption council. We believe this is not correct, and we hope that the new Kyiv Council will be acting differently, will be providing our candidates very knowledgeable so that they participate in the work of anti-corruption council. We do have time for questions, or maybe if you have one more speaker. Good afternoon, Vitaly Gryb. I'm the member of Anti-Corruption Council. In fact, I want to tell you the following. I was a witness of how Anti-Corruption Council was created a year ago, maybe even more than a year ago. The leadership of Kyiv City administration decided to involve the public to developing some of the anti-corruption policies, development of regulations which would minimize the corruption components. I personally was looking for active people, experts who I was inviting to draft these documents. We regularly had meetings, and finally we decided to make these meetings more formal, and that is how Anti-Corruption Council was set up. It's worth mentioning that Anti-Corruption Council doesn't look like any other body in Ukraine. It was set up according to a new principle. We're building it. We have some problems. The origin of documents. First, we are fighting inside the Anti-Corruption Council. Then we are fighting to promote our decisions. Not everything is perfect, but taking into account the fact that we are building the first in Ukraine body like that, which isn't like any other council. That is why, well, maybe it's called Anti-Corruption Council, but it's headed by the city mayor. That sounds absurd. We are building this body. We're transforming this body. We have rules of procedures. We're developing rules of procedure. but in the process of our work it will be transformed so that there will be no questions to it as to advisory board. Thank you.
Шановні колеги, на жаль, у нас вже мав
Unfortunately, we don't have time for the next briefing.